We will now be exploring summary statistics. Now, what are summary statistics? Summary statistics is information which succinctly describes your data. In other words, it summarizes your data. This is extremely useful. Commonly in data analysis, you may be dealing with thousands or even millions of data points. It's impossible for a single person to look through each individual data point. Instead, what they can do is obtain summary statistics to quickly get an overview about specific characteristics of their data. Now, what kind of summary statistics you calculate will be dependent on your variable type. Now, for continuous variables, there are two main summary statistics we'll be covering, median and mean. The median is the point on a scale that would separate a distribution or list of values or scores into two groups, with one half the values being greater than the median and one half being below. What this means is that the median is essentially taking all the values of a variable and arranging them in a number line in ascending order of their value. The median is then the middle number or value that would separate this group perfectly in half, with half of the values being greater than the median and half of the values being less than the median. The next summary statistic is the mean. This is essentially taking the sum of all the values in a variable, in other words, adding all of them up, and then dividing by the number of values there are for that single variable. Now, sometimes having only the technical definition may make these concepts hard to understand. Let's see an example. Say we have this set of numbers you see here, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 7, 9. We'll be calculating both the median and mean of these numbers. For the median, we would arrange these numbers in a sequential order. We would then figure out if there's a value in the middle of these numbers which can separate them perfectly in half. In this case, there is. That middle number is 3. In this case, the median is 3. Now, we'll calculate the mean for these numbers. First, we add up all the numbers together. After we find the sum, we then divide by the total amount of numbers there are. In this case, there are 7, so we divide the sum by 7. This gives us the answer of 4, which is the mean for the set of values. Now, when calculating summary statistics, you need to watch out for data points called outliers. These are data points that are very different from your other observations. For instance, they can be extremely high or extremely low values compared to other data points. These outliers can have significant and unintended consequences for calculating summary statistics. For instance, look at the example data below. It's similar to the data we saw in the previous slide, but now instead of 9, we have 900. If you calculate the median, you will get 4.5. But if you calculate the mean, you get 131.3. This goes to show that median is much better calculation for skewed data with many outliers compared to mean. It also shows that outliers can exert significant effects depending on the type of calculation that you're doing. Now, for categorical variables, they have their own summary statistics. After all, you can't calculate the mean or median for whether or not, for instance, someone has been admitted to the hospital. Instead, what you can do is find the frequency, which is the number of each category. Using the previous example, in our second video, this would be the number of individuals that have been admitted to the hospital and not been admitted to the hospital. You could then calculate the percentage, which is the percentage of the total for each category. In the previous example, this would be the percentage of individuals that have been admitted to the hospital and not admitted to the hospital. Let's take a look at an example. For instance, say we have 100 people, and of those, we know that 50 have been admitted to the hospital, 40 have not, and 10 are unknown. So for those admitted to the hospital, we know their frequency count is 50. We also know the percentage of the total of 100 is 50%. On the other hand, 40 people have not been admitted to the hospital. In this case, the frequency count is 40, and of the total percentage, this is 40%. Now, the final aspect of summary statistics we need to discuss is variability. This just means how spread out your data is. Above, you can see a graph of a blue data set and a red data set. Both data sets have the same median and mean. Essentially, they have the same middle point. However, you can see how spread out they are is very, very different, with the red data set being much more spread out. This is despite having the same median and mean. When calculating summary statistics, it's important to take into account how spread out the data is. So, variability will show how spread out a continuous variable is. Keep in mind that variability here only applies to continuous variables. Now, depending on whether you're calculating the median or mean, there are two measures of variability to be aware of. The first is standard deviation. This will measure the spread for means. The second is interquartile range, which will measure the spread for medians. Well, these are two different measures. The same principle applies. The higher either of these values are, the more spread out your data is.